Well, happy Tuesday to you. I am on part 3 of my geospatial journey. My hope is not only does it tell my story, but it really tells the geospatial story. I've been working in the geospatial industry since the mid-90s, so I've seen a lot of changes, and I was really trying to map out my journey within that the industry and how that industry's changed. So we're getting to the present day. I've covered really the last 30 years in the last 2 talks, and if you haven't seen them, I'll provide links to them below this video. So we've seen the evolution of the web and how we started to get web GIS. That was in the 90s, early 2000s. We've seen mobile appear and the importance of mobile computing, GPS on a mobile device, and how that's impacted our industry. And now we've entered the third phase, I believe, in the evolution of the geospatial industry. And I think we're at this massive change, this inflection point, as many people call it, far bigger than the other two. And that's really driven by, again, the notion of Geospatial 2.0, the massive data we're now collecting, multidimensional data, that's LiDAR and all sorts of other types of data. So we have masses of data. We've got new platforms and software, so technologies move forward. And most importantly, we've got AI, and that's AI both to work on the technical side and build new products to automate things, and also on the commercial side. And this talk today is really about the commercial side of the geospatial industry. I mentioned I spent the first half of my career as a technologist building GIS applications. The second part of my career has been on the commercial side of it. So I've really worked sort of on the business development, sales, marketing, and with product folks as well. So I've kind of sat between those 3 places. And I've seen, as I've sort of taken my journey, some real challenges on the commercial side of things. I think, as I mentioned in my last talk, the technologists have got best principles down. There's some very, very smart technologists, but the commercial side has kind of struggled a little bit. And in this talk, let me cover some of the struggles that I've seen and some of the paths forward for folks to get past the things that I've seen in my career and help people with in my career. Most importantly is the helping thing. So there are really 3 buckets that I've kind of identified within the commercial world that are challenging for geospatial companies. The first one is this whole notion of product market fit. So what does that mean? It's kind of a marketing term. But I've seen multiple times where product market fit has failed. And there are really 2 parts to that. The first part is if you're bringing an existing product to a different market. So whether it's moving something from Europe to the US or vice versa, or you're changing a product, it's being sold in a certain way and you want to sell it in a certain different way. I've seen that as a real challenge in multiple times. I've seen sales folks being given these products in these new verticals, these new places, and being told just go sell them. And most of the time, that's failed. So it's been a huge problem, and it continues to be a problem. The second part of that is new products. A lot of organizations now, a lot of the geospatial companies are service companies, and a lot of them are trying to build their own products. And I think in today's world, again, with this growth of machine learning, there are some huge opportunities to build new products. But building a product is a challenging process. And I've been in situations where I've had senior folks say, we've got all these MVPs on the shelf that we can't bring to market, minimum viable products. In other words, trying to find something that's going to work in the marketplace. Been a massive problem. And as I've dug deeper into that second problem, the MVPs on the shelf, more often than not, it's because technical people are driving the boat. It's not commercial people. So technical people come up with what they think is a good idea. They never validate it in the marketplace. And that validation thing is really the sort of the key piece for me that I realized quite early as I was sort of looking at these problems and asked to help with these problems, that design thinking is something that very few people know about. Now, design thinking, I won't go into details in this particular talk. I'll introduce it here. I'll probably do a separate talk on this. But design thinking is a framework which is human-centric, which is really designed to sort of figure out not just product market fit, but most importantly, building new products. So it's an iterative process where an idea is formed, a customer is involved with the idea in its initial phase and validating it. A prototype is built, and it goes through this cycle back and forth, back and forth, back and forth. But there's always a human in the loop. There's always a customer in the loop. So you're always validating through the process. So more on that to come. Geoffrey Moore's written a really great book called Crossing the Chasm. It's really a marketing book for crossing the chasm to wider acceptance of a new product. But there are some really key parts in that book. And the notion of beachheads, which is in one of the chapters, is really, really worth visiting if you haven't read that book, and in particular that section. That is defining where you're going for. If you've got a product idea, if you build an MVP, it's targeting where you can potentially be successful. Now, that's more of a product evolutionary place, but in this part of the talk, this product market fit, it's worth mentioning. So that's the first piece that I've seen challenging, and what I currently work on in my current role. The second one is strategy. I think strategy is massively misunderstood. People pay a lot of money to get external companies to build strategy, and internal strategies generally not very well formed. I've found. I'm generalizing here, but in terms of actually, again, I'm a framework person, as you can tell. Design thinking is a framework I like to follow. I like Roger Martin. Roger Martin is sort of one of the world's foremost experts on this whole notion of strategy. He's also a design thinking guy as well. And he's the guy that actually made Rutgers into the business school that it is today. When he worked there as the head of the business department, or the chair of the business department, it was unknown, and he built it using his strategy into this world-renowned business school. So he's taken the principles he used and he's applied them. And the kind of things that he's thinking about there is defining your vision and mission for what you're doing, whether it be a brand, whether it be a product, defining where you're going to play, defining how you're going to win, and then making winning a reality. So he's got 5 or 6 pieces to his structure and his framework. But without a strategy, you're destined to fail. Strategies are these hypotheses which you define and you go after, and you execute against the strategy. So too often I've not seen strategies in place. I've seen people kind of winging it in many ways and not really having a really clearly defined strategy, which they're adjusting based on what they're discovering as they execute. So that's the second missing piece that I've seen. Again, stuff that I'm involved with today is to build out those strategies and make sure there's no missing pieces. Then the third piece is really this go-to-market execution. I'll call it that. I mean, it builds off of the strategy. So you've built your strategy, you then go and execute that. And this is where we're talking about the sales and marketing guys primarily. I've too often seen in geospatial, and I've had this people saying this to me, senior leadership saying this to me: do we hire people who are pure salesmen who know nothing about geospatial, or do we hire people who are geospatial experts? And in both cases, I've seen that fail. I fear that the sales and marketing world, the go-to-market world, that's the real conundrum. Geospatial people are too deep in the weeds. Often they come from technology backgrounds and they're too deep in the weeds in the technology. People who come in from the outside who are good salespeople are too often, and I'm being harsh here, a widget salesman. So they're not really diving deeper into the technology. They're not really explaining the value that the technology brings, whatever that solution might be or that product might be. So it's a real challenge in terms of the people doing the execution. And I've seen quite often flat sales in organizations. They can't grow. And this is the primary reasons to why. So there are real key pieces to the puzzle here. And again, I'll probably cover that in a separate talk, but websites are your starting point. If your website doesn't explain what you do in a very clear way, very quickly out of the gate, then you're already failing. So it's the cornerstone of any go-to-market execution is a website. And quite often I see folks who have really poorly thought through websites. Again, they're too deep in the weeds. They're thinking it too deeply. Can you explain in simple terms what you do very quickly? And if you're interested again in a sort of a framework there for this piece of the puzzle, Simon Sinek's work is really, really good there. Start with why. Really well worth reading. Too many people start with the how and the what. And if you're interested in Simon Sinek, go watch his TED Talk, one of the most popular TED Talks and one of the earliest ever done, where he explains this notion of why. Websites have to start with the why and really clearly explain what you do. So websites are cornerstones. And then I think that the journey for folks in terms of sales and marketing is really that content that you're generating. A lot of people want the content, and it's certainly very true. You need really good content. But that content needs to be targeted at different parts of the sales funnel. A lot of people are not really thinking in those structural terms. So the top of the funnel is where one gets attention. That's potentially social media, LinkedIn, that's articles, that's blog posts, that's potentially webinars as well. So there's a top of the funnel world of content. There's a middle of the funnel world of content where you've got people's interest. You're going to explain in a bit more depth what it is, what your solution is. Those are ebooks, those are white papers, those type of more in-depth analyses, case studies sit in that middle area. And then you've got the bottom of the funnel where you've actually you've built prospects, and then you're going to turn those prospects into customers, newsletters, those type of things sit, demos, webinars can also fall into that place. So one has to have that defined group of content and building out that content. That content needs to be done on a super regular basis. It can't just be thrown out there as a one-off. It needs to be done, particularly on the top end. It needs to be done almost daily. Some people say social media, you need to put stuff out there daily. You need to have your personas defined. Who are you targeting? What are their pain points? Again, that kind of comes from the strategy. So you're building those stories in the content side of things. Call to actions are critical. If you have no call to actions, you're not going to drive people through the sales funnel. So call to actions are where you have opt-in pieces to the puzzle. HubSpot, if you go look at how HubSpot do their marketing, they're experts at this, and you'll see lots of ebooks, lots of call to actions in their stuff, very well designed. So those are really the three areas that I work on now. I'm a geospatial person who knows how to translate geospatial into a language that folks understand based on value and value proposition. Where I'll leave this talk actually is on AI. I haven't mentioned AI in this talk, but AI and generative AI, which a lot of people don't fully understand, is a huge I can't explain how big a deal that is to help in the process in these three areas that I've spoken about. It doesn't replace people. It's a new assistant to help you be more effective, more efficient, and automate some of the stuff that I've spoken about here. So that's today's talk. I'll probably jump into the AI stuff in the next talk and sort of try to demystify that a little bit. If you like this talk, feel free to follow me on LinkedIn. If you're watching this on YouTube, please subscribe to the channel Spatial-Next, and I'll do another one of these very soon. So thanks for watching.